Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery. It is a beautiful Thursday morning, March 2nd, 2023. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time to talk about strategies, tips, techniques, share success stories, and support each of you. Over the past couple weeks, most of our conversations have been based around the launch of the credit and funding program, and that is not our topic today. But just to draw an analogy, so with our credit and funding program, what you and I do as technical advisors is help individuals become credible enough to get funding. And in fact, credible enough to get at least $100,000. And that's part of the commitment, the guarantee. How does that happen? It's by addressing their 3 C's: credit, collateral, and capacity. Well, that's not our discussion today. But that is the analogy of what we do on the individual side. On occasion, you will run into individuals that want to go after business loans, business financing, but their business isn't credible yet. And so certainly we can help them with their current business entity and get it where it needs to be. The other option is the startup business package. That's kind of a turnkey approach. And that, in fact, is our discussion today. So let me make this flyer a bit larger, and then we will go through it together and certainly answer any questions that you all have. So again, what's the purpose of the startup business package? It's to help individuals have a credible business set up so they can pursue business funding. So in other words, what's the problem that we're solving? The problem is some individuals want business funding, but they don't have a credible business to get funded. And so this is a possible solution for that. All right, so as the title says, Startup Business Package. It is a turnkey resource to form a new business. So this has nothing to do with an existing business. This is to kind of hit the reset button, form a new business that is positioned for fast funding, right? So will everyone need the startup business package? Absolutely not. Will some people benefit from it? Certainly so. My goal today is just for you to understand how it works, how it's priced, and the money that you make off of it. Make sense? So first, we always want to identify who our target audience is. So who should participate? So entrepreneurs looking to form a new business that is well positioned for fast funding will benefit from the startup business package. This was developed with the input of former SBDC, SBA advisors, SCORE mentors, and others. This turnkey package conveniently and affordably provides what's needed to establish a successful business. So just like the credit and funding program is a bundled approach for helping build credibility of an individual, this is a bundled approach to create a credible business entity for funding. This is not a free program. People looking for free are probably misled, but it is very affordable. And so the normal price is $2,500. We have a grant allocation that in fact reduces that by $1,250. So if you're good with math, you'll say, okay, well, if it's normally $2,500 and there's a grant allocation that cuts it in half, what is the participant paying? The participant is paying $1,250, of which $250 goes to you. We'll talk about the value proposition, but it's a pretty easy one to make when we go through what's included. And part of what's included is getting them at least $5,000 of business credit or funding, typically within the first 30 days. So we can kind of jokingly say we'll pay them to participate. There's more benefit coming to them than their cost. All right, so let's go down through the bottom of the flyer. The Startup Business Package provides an affordable and effective solution for early stage businesses to meet important credibility factors to access capital. So again, Don't be confused with credit and funding and this. Credit and funding is how we help individuals become credible with the 3 C's. Nothing's changed about that. But now we're talking about let's get the business credible if what we're wanting is business funding. So what's key? What's crucial to a business being credible? It starts with having a real business address, not a residential address, not a post office box, not a shared virtual address, but a real commercial address is the underlying foundation of a credible business. And then secondly, we need the business to have a strong business credit profile. So in other words, it shows that the business has been extended credit and has paid as agreed. So again, don't confuse. There's 2 different entities that we help. Individuals, and that's the credit and funding, not what we're talking about today, and the business. So could someone just do the credit and funding and not have a credible business? Absolutely. But if the goal is to get business type funding, then the business needs to be credible as well. I think that makes sense. So let's go through what happens. Once they enroll, we're going to provide them a unique address. And when we say unique address, let's drill into what that means. So they will get an address that no one else has, because shared addresses are not seen as credible. So for example, you might go to a Regis or a WeWork or some of these other virtual office places, but a lot of different people have the same address. Suite 400, for example, and maybe hundreds of people have Suite 400, but there's some receptionist that gets the mail and sorts it out by company name. That is not a unique address. Each business should have its own suite number. So you could be in the Trump Tower in New York City. So are there thousands of different tenants in Trump Tower? Yes. But do they each have their own address? Different suite numbers, different floors, different suite numbers. Yes, that's the point we're trying to get to. So we're going to provide them a unique address, not a shared address, not a residential address, not a post office box, but a real commercial address. And then we're going to turn around and form the business with the Secretary of State. We pay those filing fees. We pay the filing fees. The individual doesn't have to. Then we'll get the EIN. And then we'll be able to start adding business credit. And no, we don't charge them for adding business credit. It's a bundled approach. So our goal is to get them about $5,000, could be more, but their first $5,000 of business credit within 30 days. So they see immediate value. So they come to us, come to you, to us, and they don't have a credible business formed, and or they don't have a credible business with a credible address, and or they don't have a credible business with a credible address, and it hasn't established any business credit on its own to show that it'll pay the bills. Because once your business has a business credit profile, what we're going to do is get them up to at least an 80 paydex score with Dun & Bradstreet, for example. Then all of a sudden now we can go buy company cars in the business's name. We can go buy real estate in the business's name. We can get credit cards if you want in the business's name. We can get business loans in the business name. But those are very difficult, if not impossible, to do if the business isn't credible. Hopefully that makes sense. So on the left-hand side, we kind of wrap it up with, well, why would someone want to enroll? Well, if you want to improve the legitimacy of your business, increase access to capital, and get free business credit building. And there's some great companies that will help you build business credit. But to build business credit, we need to start with an entity that is in good standing with the Secretary of State that has a unique commercial address. So I believe we're the only resource that's providing the address and then the free business credit building. So let's go through and make sure that we all are clear on what's included, because transparency is crucial, right? We all want to be on the same page. So let's talk about these 5 bullets of what's included. You ready? So the first bullet is a unique business address with mail forwarding. We've kind of covered that. And again, it's a commercial address. It's a real address. It's not, it's the optimum type of address for qualifying for funding. So this is obviously remarkably cheaper than them going out and actually buying an office building or signing a physical lease, which could be thousands of dollars a month. Here, this is a great substitute for that. Make sense? Then we're going to be able to help them. Oh, well, we're gonna do the filing with the Secretary of State. We'll do that for them, and we'll pay for that. And then we'll help them get their EIN. Then we'll be helping them build their business credit, as we've talked about. We'll assign one of our business paralegals to work with them, an assigned account rep. And then what's here in kind of orangish red is really interesting. If you're not familiar with the Chapman Fund, you should be. So let me step back. There's different types of funding for businesses, but there are some special funding programs that are meant to be economically development oriented. So instead of coming from a bank or a credit union, they actually come from a taxing authority. And so the Chapman Fund is one of those. The Chapman Fund is a type of funding meant to stimulate the developments, the startups of new businesses. And so it has some benefits and it has some limitations, kind of like most things in life. One of the benefits is it's easier to qualify for. One of the detriments is it has a hard cap of $250,000. So we cannot get more than $250,000 per business through the Chapman Fund. So if the business needs more than $250,000, this may only be the first tranche or an initial tranche. It may not be all that the business needs. But that's okay. We're going to talk about that more in a subsequent bullet. The uses of funds are fairly flexible. It can be used for fixed assets, new construction, renovations, leased property, equipment, inventory, and working capital. So in general, most uses are permissible. This is the bullet I was mentioning a moment ago. So let's say that the client wants more than $250,000. Some clients would kind of get a little pissed off at you. Wait, I need $500,000. This stupid Chapman Fund's only going to get me half of it. I'm unhappy, right? I have one client, he'll email me, unhappy from Ohio. So let's say that the client from Ohio says, well, I'm unhappy because this shitty Chapman Fund's only going to get me $250,000. Well, what we have to let the client know is that we can use that in conjunction with other types of funding. It doesn't have to be standalone. In many cases, that's what we've done. It's interesting, in some cases, it can even be positioned to provide the equity injection for a larger loan. And as I mentioned before, this is not from a bank, it's not from a credit union, it's from a taxing authority. And then, of course, if someone's interested, they'll just email us and we'll be able to get them a packet. So let's summarize and then let's talk about implementation as far as you're concerned as a distribution partner. The Startup Business Package is a wonderful complement to the credit and funding program. No one is required to use the Startup Business Package, but it's pretty easy to discern if they would benefit from it. It's almost like a checklist. Okay, Joe, do you have a bit? If you want business funding, do you have a business formed? Yes or no? If yes, is it in good standing with the Secretary of State? Are you current with your tax filings? Do you have a unique commercial address, Joe? That's a real address, not a shared address. Joe, does your business have business credit lines established? Has it proven that it can manage credit? Does it have at least an 80 paydex score? So those are all kind of pre-qualifying questions to pretty easily determine if someone might benefit from the startup package. But this isn't a pivot trying to change what we do. It's just simply a resource to help those that lack the credibility on the business side if they want business funding. I was talking to a client yesterday, and frankly, he's a disgruntled client. He's got some real credibility issues that we're working through, but on his business side, he's got a total of $56 in his business bank account. He wants to borrow $1 million, and his business has not generated any income and has not filed tax returns. So there's multiple layers of credibility issues in trying to get that $1 million. So instead, what we came to agreement with yesterday, he's going to do the startup business package. We're going to hit the reset button. He'll keep that entity, but we'll start a new entity specifically for the capital raise. Obviously, if it just starts now in March of 2023, then it wouldn't even have a tax return to do last year. We'll have a true commercial address, which he doesn't have with his prior business. We'll have business trade lines established, and then we'll move forward with funding with it. So my point is, there's two types of people that might benefit from this: those that haven't started a business yet, or those that have a business, but it's not set up credibly enough to be effective for a business capital raise. Now, if they say, no, I've got my own business, it's in Houston, Texas, and I just want to get it credible, then great, we can work with them. But it comes down to, okay, well, you haven't filed your tax returns in 2 years, you need to do that. Oh, well, I can't reach my accountant, or I owe my accountant money. And then it's like, well, do you have a true commercial address? No, I'm using my home address. So in many cases, it's easier just to hit the reset button and plug into this than fixing a mess. But the client's always right, so we'll work with the client as needed. All right, so let's address any questions, comments, concerns on this. I'll make it just a bit smaller so we can all see it, although probably too small to read it now. All right, so Ryan has the first question. Thanks, Ryan. Ryan says, can someone who has a company go through this to reform their business, or should they go through credit and funding? Well, I don't think that's a good question. So credit and funding is about them as a person, getting the individual credible with their credit, with their collateral, with their capacity, talking about the person, right? That's a different conversation. Here, we're not talking about the person, we're talking about the business, right? So it's crucial that we understand. So these are not redundant or conflicting strategies, but there's a person that owns the business, we'll call him the key person, and there's a business entity. Well, if we want to get funding, at least one of the two of them need to be credible. But if we want business funding, we need to be cognizant, is the business credible? And we can make that larger. What does that mean? What makes a business credible? Okay, is it formed with the Secretary of State? Is it in good standing with the Secretary of State? Has it filed tax returns if needed? Does it have a true commercial address? Does it have at least an 80 PAYDEX score, which is generated from Dun & Bradstreet? So in other words, the business is credible. So it's just two sides of the coin, Ryan, and don't conflict. On one side, you have the person, the other side, you have the business. One side, the person, other side, the business. So Ryan, if that is not clear, let me know. And I was a little hesitant to bring this up today because this is relaunched. We had launched the Startup Business Package a year ago, but realized that we needed to make a few tweaks to it. So now we're ready to go forward. Bernard asked a couple questions. And so for the filing, as we state, we will cover the filing fee with the Secretary of State. We pay for that. Technically, the grant pays for it, but regardless, it's not paid by the client. The filing fee is paid by us, generically stated. The grant pays for it. So the individual does not have to pay the filing fee. But Bernard's right by bringing up, each year, there are responsibilities of owning a business, such as filing taxes, such as filing annual annual filings with the Secretary of State. So thank you, Bernard, for bringing that up. Yeah, we're not promising to pay for their go forward expenses of keeping the business compliant in future years. That maybe we need to make that more clear, that I didn't know it would even be inferred. So we're getting the business set up legally, properly, and positioned for fast funding. So we are doing that. But for subsequent costs, for filing tax returns, for filing annual returns with Secretary of State, we're not on the hook for that. All right, good question. And I didn't even think that someone might infer that, but Bernard asked a good question. So again, I think this is just one more arrow in our quiver. Certainly, if you wanted, as a distribution partner, if you wanted to take this out to the marketplace, you could. I think the easiest is not to, though, and it's probably best to go out to the marketplace with the credit and funding program. Client enrolls in that, and we start gathering data. And if we determine that they're wanting business funding, but they don't have a credible business, then there's a fork in the road, not meaning a tree laid down that keeps us from moving forward, but a decision needs to be made. All right, client, if your business is not set up properly, do we want to either fix it and improve its credibility? Do we want to ignore business funding and not worry about the lack of credibility of your business? Or thirdly, would you like to plug into the startup business package whereby we can just plug and play with a credible business for your funding? They can keep their current entity. They can continue to operate it. No one's taking anything away from them. We're just in that scenario, in this scenario, setting up a new business entity for the funding. And what's really nice is now we're in the market for the Chapman Fund, which, sorry, they probably wouldn't have been otherwise. So does everyone see the value in this? What I do realize is that there's alternatives or substitutes, right? So let's take Charles. So Charles runs into a client and the client doesn't have a credible business. Well, the client could go hire an attorney, develop the documents, and submit into the Secretary of State, or even use like a legal Zoom. So that's fine. Sure, they could do that a different way. They could go get their own EIN number. That's certainly fine. They're going to need a commercial address, though, right? So it's not just the filing. At the core of this is, do we have a true, unique commercial address? I'll tell you that there's a number of lenders that will not approve business loans if the address doesn't meet their underwriting criteria. So a residential address for many, not for all lenders, but for many lenders, is an automatic rejection. I'll tell you why in just a moment. Post office boxes, automatic rejection for many, not all lenders. Shared addresses, automatic rejection for some, not all lenders. So let's talk about why that's so important. And this isn't a real pleasant part of the conversation, but it's important for you to know the why. Because if you know the why, then the what makes sense. It's not unusual that when a lender issues a larger business loan, that they will place a UCC lien against the business. Just like when you bought your house, right? The mortgage company has a lien against your house. And so if you don't pay your mortgage on your house, then they can repossess the house. I know it's a little indirect, but stick with me. So on business funding, for larger loans, they'll put a lien against the business, and that's fine, right? You'd expect them to do that. They want to protect themselves. Doesn't mean they're taking your business or controlling your business, but it means they have rights to your business assets if you don't pay as agreed. Fair enough, right? Well, what happens if your business is based in your home? They can't do that. A commercial lender can't come take your house or the back bedroom of your apartment if you don't pay your business loan. So they won't even loan money in many cases to people that don't have a true commercial address. So let me paint an ugly picture to make it clearer. Let's say we go out and we get $1 million loan for a business, and that business doesn't pay its bills, doesn't pay the lender back. The lender will likely go through a process, and it will ultimately result in them padlocking the door to the business and saying, okay, you've defaulted. Now everything in this business building or office suite, whatever the address is specific to, is now taken in control of by the lender. And of course, we don't want that. They don't want that. But maybe you're seeing the point. If there's not a true business address that's not a shared address, then there's no way for them to go lay claim to the assets within the office of the business, because the business really isn't credible, really doesn't have its own office. So that is one reason, just one reason, why having a true, credible, unique commercial address is important. It doesn't have to be the address that you go to work at. It doesn't have to be the address that clients come to, but an address on record that is a true commercial address. Timothy asked a good question. Timothy's always got the hard questions for me. So in terms of addresses, there is a United States Postal Service database. So every address is coded, categorized, so you can't game the system. You can't take your back bedroom or a storage building in your backyard and say, oh, that's my office, because the literal street address is going to show that it's not a commercial address. In most cases, it's a residential address. Well, a residential address is not a credible address because it's not a commercial address. Now you can say, oh, no, I've got my own storage building in back, and that's actually where I work. Well, that may be where you actually work, but it fails the litmus test of credibility, because in the United States Postal Service database, it's not coded as a commercial address. Because what is it that you and I do? And I'll wrap up here. What you and I do is help clients navigate the system so they look more credible on paper. Well, having a business entity that's properly formed, that's in good standing with the Secretary of State, that has a unique commercial address, are very strong credibility factors. And so that's what we're getting at here. All right, who else has questions, comments, concerns on this? So do clients have to get this? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If they do get it, how much does it cost? Well, it's a $2,500 program. The grant we applied for and just was renewed for 2023 covers half of it. So thus the other half of it is the cost to the client, of which will pay you $250. Not a real big deal, but you deserve some remuneration for bringing the client to the table. All right, James is asking about guarantees. Yes, so there are a number of guarantees that's made. Number one, we guarantee that we'll set up their business. Well, we'll go in order. We guarantee them that we'll give them a unique business address. That's guaranteed. We guarantee that we're going to file with the Secretary of State and help them get their EIN. We guarantee we're going to help them build their business credit for free. We guarantee that we'll provide an assigned mentor for support. And we guarantee that they'll have geographic access to the Chapman Fund. So, yeah, there's no risk to the client. There's not going to be surprises. They're going to get what we propose to provide here. All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? So in summary, I hope you see that this is a valuable resource to help improve the credibility of businesses. The credit and funding program takes care of the person. There's nothing else that needs to be done with the person. But here we're talking about what if the business that they want funding for isn't credible. This is one option. We can either improve the credibility of the existing business or essentially hit the reset button and use this in lieu of. Sound good? All right, well, thanks everyone. We'll see you back tomorrow morning. Let us know if you have any questions or concerns. Bye-bye.